The first person I knew who supported Donald Trump was my father. I was shocked. My entire family is racially diverse, and I believed the left-wing propaganda that Donald Trump was a racist. My father said, "No, he's not, Amber. What are you talking about?" And when I insisted, he said, "Prove it."
5 years, you perpetuated a false claim that the nation's first black president was not a natural-born citizen. You questioned his legitimacy. In the last couple of weeks, you acknowledged what most Americans have accepted for years. The president was born in the United States. Can you tell us what took you so long?
I've never seen one.
Well, why is this important to you?
Because if you are going to be the president of the United States, you have to be born in this country. And there is a doubt as to whether or not he was born.
Do you really feel there's a doubt?
You know, I started off by saying, and I always do, and I did in The View, I'm a very smart guy. I went to the best college. I had good marks. I was a very smart guy, good student, all that stuff, okay? Because what they do to the birthers, which is a term I hate, because a lot of these birthers are just really quality people. People have birth certificates. He doesn't have a birth certificate. Now, he may have one, but there's something on that birth, maybe religion, maybe it says he's a Muslim. I don't know.
The president and his campaign are now publicly stoking a false and racist theory circulating among his supporters that Harris is ineligible to run for vice president.
I heard it today that she doesn't meet the requirements.
Years of settled law say otherwise.
Trump posted an article on his Truth Social account from a right-wing outlet that claimed Haley, his GOP rival, is ineligible to be president because her parents were not U.S. citizens when she was born. Haley was born in South Carolina and has lived in the U.S. her entire life. Her parents were immigrants who became citizens after her birth in 1972. As we know too well, Haley is not the first victim of Trump's racist birtherism. She is just the latest. Trump has attempted to question the citizenship of former President Barack Obama, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, and Vice President Kamala Harris.
He said, "Prove it."
The Department of Justice took notice in 1973 and slammed Donald Trump and his father, Fred Trump, with a lawsuit. Trump management was charged with discriminating against African Americans and breaking federal law. Donald Trump, then just 27, was president of the company. The Department of Justice accused the Trumps of violating the Fair Housing Act, arguing they were turning away renters based on race and color. Who tipped them off? Local activists, so-called testers, posing as potential renters at Trump's buildings, mainly in Brooklyn and Queens.
This building in Brooklyn, New York, a black man was told there were no apartments to rent. One day later, enter Sheila. It was her turn to try and rent the place.
He greeted me with open arms, showed me the apartment, took me, he opened every door, every cabinet. He didn't know what else to show me to convince me to take the apartment.
Sheila then revealed who she was, and she says he knew the jig was up.
What can I do? I'm sorry, but this is what my boss told me to do. I'm following directions. I'm not allowed to rent to black people.
Her visit to the boss's office has stuck with her more than 40 years.
It was Donald Trump and Fred Trump, his father.
Ultimately, a discrimination lawsuit was filed against the two men.
Lise Goldweber was a lawyer for the DOJ's Fair Housing section at the time and was called on to handle the Trump case.
When the black testers came, they were shown, they may have been shown apartments, but were told nothing was available. Whereas when the white testers came, yes, there were things that were available.
There was a orange-haired real estate developer in New York at the time of the Central Park jogger case who took out full-page ads in all the daily newspapers asking for the return of the death penalty and more police.
Of course I hate these people, and let's all hate these people, because maybe hate is what we need if we're going to get something done.
And he believed that these children should be executed, even though, of course, even the return of the death penalty would disqualify the execution of children.
The prison sentences of the Central Park Five were overturned, but by that time they had already served between 5 and 13 years. In 2014, the men were awarded a $40 million settlement from New York City. The story that had gripped the city for years came to a close, and yet one Manhattan resident's obsession with the case continues to this day. Just weeks after the crime was committed in 1989, Donald Trump took out a full-page ad in 4 New York newspapers advocating the return of the death penalty. And when the city awarded the men a settlement in 2014, Trump wrote an editorial in the Daily News calling the settlement a disgrace. And now, even now, as the presidential nominee for the Republican Party, Trump hasn't allowed science or evidence to change his initial reaction to the case. Just this week, Trump said he still considers the men, again, exonerated by the criminal justice system and by DNA scientific evidence, guilty, issuing a statement saying, quote, they admitted they were guilty. The police doing the original investigation say they were guilty. The fact that case was settled with so much evidence against them is outrageous. The woman so badly injured will never be the same.
Is there a Muslim problem in the world?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I don't notice Swedish people knocking down the World Trade Center. Well, there is a Muslim problem, absolutely. You just have to turn on your television set.
And do you think it encompasses all Muslims?
No, and that's the sad part about life, because you have fabulous Muslims. I know many Muslims, and they're fabulous people. They're smart, they're industrious, they're great. Unfortunately, at this moment in time, there is a Muslim problem in the world.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. But I speak to border guards, and they tell us what we're getting. And it only makes common sense. It only makes common sense. They're sending us not the right people. It's coming from more than Mexico. It's coming from all over South and Latin America, and it's coming probably from the Middle East. We had a case where we had an African-American guy who was a fan of mine. Great fan, great guy. In fact, I want to find out what's going on with him. You know what oh, look at my African-American over here. Look at him. Look how much African-American communities have suffered under Democratic control. To those I say the following. What do you have to lose by trying something new like Trump? What do you have to lose? I say it again, what do you have to lose? Look, what do you have to lose? You're living in poverty, your schools are no good, you have no jobs, 58% of your youth is unemployed. The danger, the crime, the lack of education, no jobs. African Americans are living in hell in the inner cities. I mean, they're living in hell. You walk to the store for a loaf of bread, you get shot. We're going to fix our inner cities. We're going to fix. Remember this. Remember this. Just remember this. So important. For years, the Democrats have controlled the inner cities, some up to 100 years, some over 100 years, unbroken. I say to the African-American community and to the Hispanic community, what the hell do you have to lose? I will fix it. Good. These lights are so bright in my eyes that I can't see too many people out there. But I can only see the black ones. I can't see any white ones, you see? That's how far I've come. That's how far I've come. That's a long way, isn't it? We've all seen the mugshot. And you know who embraced it more than anybody else? The black population. It's incredible. You see black people walking around with my mugshot. You know, they do shirts and they sell them for $19 a piece. It's pretty amazing.
He said, prove it.
Are you putting what you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane?
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say. You had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
President, do you still think there were very fine people on both sides in Charlotte?
Well, I've answered that question, and if you look at what I said, you will see that that question was answered perfectly. And I was talking about people that went because they felt very strongly about the monument to Robert E. Lee, a great general. Whether you like it or not, he was one of the great generals.
But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
willing to do
specifically
that, but
do it? Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Do you want to call them? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
white like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left.
Just hours till Super Tuesday, Donald Trump again under fire, this time not for what he said, but what he wouldn't say.
Donald Trump refused to criticize the Ku Klux Klan.
We should all be united in saying that the Klan is reprehensible.
Earlier Sunday, Trump repeatedly deflected when asked to disavow former KKK leader David Duke, who recently told his radio listeners voting against Trump is really treason to your heritage.
Just so you understand, I don't know anything about David Duke, okay?
Would you just say, unequivocally, you condemn them and you don't want their support?
Well, I have to look at the group. I mean, I don't know what group you're talking about.
I mean, I'm just talking about David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan here, but...
I don't know, honestly, I don't know David Duke.
The president tonight apparently uncorking another astonishing statement, complaining to lawmakers in the Oval Office about protections for immigrants. Why do we want these people from, quote, all these shithole countries here? According to a Democratic aide familiar with the conversation, Mr. Trump was referring to African nations and Haiti before suggesting the U.S. should have more people from places like Norway.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and a very tough, you know, I've used the word on occasion, hombre. A very tough hombre is breaking into the window of a young woman whose husband is away as a traveling salesman or whatever he may do.
Well, Christian, from the start of lockdown to last month, there were more than 3,800 anti-Asian American incidences here in the US, up 25% from the year before. As simply put, people looked around for someone to blame for the coronavirus and settled on the Asian community. Koreans, as you mentioned, Thai people, not just Chinese, encouraged, of course, by Donald Trump and his anti-China rhetoric.
For that, right? It's got all different names. Wuhan. Wuhan was catching on. Coronavirus, right? Kung flu, yeah. Kung flu. COVID-19, COVID. I say, what's the 19? COVID-19. Some people can't explain what the 19. Give me the COVID-19. I said, that's an odd name. I could give you many, many names. Some people call it the Chinese flu, the China flu, right? They call it the China as opposed to the China. It's a disease, without question, has more names than any disease in history. I can name Kung flu.
He said, prove it.
After months of racist attacks by the former president, Elaine Chao, his former Secretary of Transportation, is speaking out. She told Politico in a statement, quote, when I was young, some people deliberately misspelled or mispronounced my name. Asian Americans have worked hard to change that experience for the next generation. He doesn't seem to understand that, which says a whole lot more about him than it will ever say about Asian Americans. This response comes after high-profile shootings targeting the Asian American community and after the former president repeatedly used a demeaning term in his social media post to describe Chao. I won't say it, but you can see it there highlighted on the screen. He has also singled out her Asian American heritage as Miss McConnell's, quote, China-loving wife.
Orange, she seems to have made it her job.
Who, Pocahontas? Pocahontas?
Is that offensive? Should you use that
she
term?
is it
very
offensive? You tell me.
offensive.
Oh,
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Pocahontas? Is that what you said? Elizabeth Warren?
Why are you having this?
You're very, very special people. You were here long before any of us were here. Although we have a representative in Congress who they say was here a long time ago. They call her Pocahontas. But you know what? I like you.
A legal fight with the Trump administration over the deportation of a man from Mexico has landed in the lap of a California federal judge, Gonzalo Curiel, the same judge who presided over lawsuits against Trump University. Candidate Trump said the judge, who was born in Indiana, hated him.
I believe he happens to be Spanish, which is fine. He's Hispanic, which is fine. And we haven't asked for recusal, which we may do.
In Nevada on Sunday, he accused immigrants of staging an invasion, saying, quote, they're taking over our cities. And in New Hampshire Saturday, using some rhetoric that's been compared to quotes from Nazi Germany. In fact, several thousand supporters at this rally. The leading Republican candidate reportedly went off script. These comments were not part of the prepared remarks that were delivered to press ahead of time. But take a listen for yourself.
They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. They're coming into our country from Africa, from Asia, all over the world. They're pouring into our country. It's crazy what's going on. They're ruining our country. And it's true. They're destroying the blood of our country. That's what they're doing. They're destroying our country. They don't like it when I said that. And I never read Mein Kampf. They said, oh, Hitler said that in a much different way. No, they're coming from all over the world, people all over the world. We have no idea. They could be healthy. They could be very unhealthy. They could bring in disease that's going to catch on in our country.
Former president is under fire for a video he posted on social media that used language from Nazi Germany. The latest in a series of anti-Semitic and authoritarian statements from Trump and his campaign. Rachel Scott has the story. Good morning, Rachel.
George, good morning. Of course, it is normal for presidential candidates to share videos with their vision for the country. It is not normal for those videos to include references to Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany. The Trump campaign tells us this morning that this was a video that was shared by a staffer while the former president was in court, and that staffer missed the reference, but it was still left up for several hours. Former President Donald Trump sparking backlash this morning after a video posted to his social media account seemingly suggests there will be a unified Reich if he wins the 2024 election.
Donald Trump wins. What's next for America?
Those words are largely associated with Nazi Germany and Adolf Hitler's Third Reich, another name for his Nazi regime. The 30-second video features hypothetical newspaper articles of Trump celebrating a victory in November. That phrase appearing 3 times, including under the headline, "What's Next for America?" It includes references to World War I, citing German industrial strength and peace through strength. Another headline suggesting Trump would reject globalists, a phrase often used by the far right as an anti-Semitic slur.
He said, prove it.
Former President Trump is reportedly planning in a second term to implement anti-racism protections for white people. And if you're waiting for me to say April Fools, keep on waiting.
So to prove my father wrong, I did my research and looked into all things Donald Trump. People have to do their research. I watched all the rallies, and I started meeting so many of you, his red hat wearing supporters. I realized Donald Trump and his supporters don't care if you're black, white, gay, or straight. It's all love.
And some wearing MAGA hats and shirts that said Trump 2020. I told them to just leave the Capitol, and in response they yelled, "No, man, this is our house. President Trump invited us here. We're here to stop the steal. Joe Biden is not the president. Nobody voted for Joe Biden. I'm a law enforcement officer, and I do my best to keep politics out of my job. But in this circumstance, I responded, well, I voted for Joe Biden. Does my vote not count? Am I nobody? That prompted a torrent of racial epithets. One woman in a pink MAGA shirt yelled, "You hear that, guys? This nigger voted for Joe Biden." Then the crowd, perhaps around 20 people, joined in screaming, "Boo, fucking nigger." No one had ever called me a nigger while wearing the uniform of a Capitol Police officer. In the days following the attempted insurrection, other black officers shared with me their own stories of racial abuse on January 6th. One officer told me he had never, and in his entire 40 years of life, been called a nigger to his face, and that streak ended on January 6th. Yet another black officer later told me he had been confronted by insurrectionists in the Capitol who told him, "Put your gun down and we'll show you what kind of nigger you really are."
If you're black, white, gay, or straight, it's all love.
We combed through hours of footage and found evidence of a complex network of groups driven by conspiracy theories, white supremacy, and a Trump-infused brand of Christianity. Trump supporters and many of these groups often deny that they are racist, but the visual evidence on display at the Capitol said otherwise. An OK hand gesture hijacked to read WP for white power, a neo-Nazi tattoo, a Camp Auschwitz sweatshirt, and a gallows built that day to frame the Capitol.
Proud Boys!
The Proud Boys marched outside with orange armbands and megaphones after their leader said they'd show up in record numbers. One of them even posted a selfie from inside the rotunda. And for the first time in U.S. history, the battle flag of the defeated side of the Civil War entered the Capitol. Many now see it as a racist symbol tied to slavery.
His supporters don't care if you're black, white, gay, or straight. It's all love.
A group of Trump supporters caught screaming homophobic slurs in Wilton Manor.
A conservative gathering turned hateful in Phoenix when Rob Smith, a black gay Republican influencer, says that he was heckled by what he describes as a group of white supremacists. Watch this.
The plan also tackles a slew of social issues, from imprisoning people who create or distribute pornography to loosening certain child labor laws, enforcing book bans, and ending LGBTQ rights initiatives.
Would you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and Proud
Boys, stand back and stand by.
The right-wing Proud Boys today adopted the president's words as their new slogan, "Stand back, stand by."
And that's when it hit me. These are my people. This is where I belong. So I let go of my fear of judgment, of being misunderstood, of getting attacked by the left, and I put the red hat on too. Thank you. Love you too. I never felt more free and more love for my country than I do now. I want to thank my father, who's in the audience tonight, for opening my eyes. He served over 20 years in the U.S. military. Thank you for your service, Dad. Where's he at? I love you, Dad. I love you. I love you so much. Thank you. When I met the president and Melania for the first time, he was kind and generous and funny as hell. Very funny. The First Lady was gracious and smart with a smile that will brighten up any room. If you're watching this tonight, you know our country is in trouble. Just like me. When you go to the store and buy food for your family, you're shocked. When you fill up your gas tank, you're pissed. I know I am. And when you turn on the news, you are just exhausted. Inflation is out of control. And you know in your heart it was not like this under Donald Trump. My message to you tonight comes from a humble place. The left told me to hate Trump, and even worse, to hate the other side, the people who support him. When you cut through the lies, you realize the truth. American families were better when Donald Trump was president.
How's this for a superlative for the Donald Trump economy? Average. It's probably an adjective that has never been used to describe anything Trump. But the recent government data measuring economic growth in this country reveal an economy humming along right around the average of the past decade, falling short of the president's official 3% growth target, nowhere near his hyperbolic pledges for 3, 4, 5% growth.
We were safer, wealthier, and stronger.
Joining us now with a fact check is former Treasury official and Morning Joe economic analyst Steve Ratner. He's got it all in charts. We'll start, Steve, with the issue of crime. Take a look.
We are a nation where free speech is no longer allowed and where crime is rampant and out of control like never, ever before.
The carnage line. He's always going with the carnage, Steve. Is it true?
Well, no, crime is not out of control like it's ever been before. And in fact, crime is actually continuing to drop under President Biden. So let's take a look at violent crime. This is per 100,000 people in relationship to our size of our population. And you can see that violent crime actually since 2020 has dropped by 15%. 339 violent crimes per 100,000 people. It's below any place it was during the Trump administration, and it's had this huge drop in 2023. The same is basically true of property crime. You can see here this is people robbing homes and things of that like, down 7%, 1,830 per 100,000 people. So this is a complete fiction that crime is up under the Biden administration.
That said, if you look at the numbers, Donald Trump is lying when he says crime rates are way up. They're not. They're down. They're lower than they were when he was president.
Yeah, that's just a fact. And violent crime in particular, all the ones you just laid out are down double digits year over year. They spiked in 19 and 20 and about the end of last year and really into the beginning of this year have come way down. Criminologists, law enforcement experts, they debate about why those numbers come down. They talked about that in the 90s in New York. Why did this work? The fact is they are down.
We were safer, wealthier, and stronger.
The president has boasted the Trump economy is the best in American history.
This is the greatest economy that we've had in our history, the best.
Not true. So far, the Trump economy has failed to top the best quarters of the Obama years. The economy stumbled at the end of the year, and the president's much ballyhooed second quarter 2018 tally of 4.2%, well, that was revised downward to 3.5%. One quarter, of course, never tells the whole story. Looking out over 10 years, this expansion is averaging 2.3% annual growth. Even with historic rollbacks in regulation and an enormous corporate tax cut, the Trump economy has looked, well, average.
It is time for our final Trumponomics report card for the quarter. This is where we measure, or Rick Newman measures the economy under the president, compares it to the 6 previous presidents. So, Rick, the question is, how did he do?
Trump earned a grade of C for the economy that he is leaving his successor, Joe Biden. So as you pointed out, we measure the Trump economy. We use data from Moody's Analytics and measure the Trump economy on 6 different metrics compared with prior presidents. On 3 of those, Trump has the worst record of any of the 7 presidents we look at going back to Jimmy Carter in the 1970s. He's got the worst marks for total employment, for exports, and for real GDP per capita.
On GDP, Biden, 2.9%. He beats out Trump, but Trump's numbers, of course, improve if you take out the pandemic, and Biden's come down a bit if you take out some of the rebound. Unemployment, Biden better than Trump. Average unemployment over the term so far, 4.1 versus Trump's 5%. Again, better numbers for Trump depending upon how much of the pandemic you take out. Same thing on jobs created, where Trump ends up negative, Biden way to the positive. So we took out the pandemic formally in this next thing. The losses for Trump and the initial gains for Biden, it gets a lot closer. You can see in that one right there. But Biden's numbers are still better.
Rick, A-. You are a tough grader. I was surprised to see that grade here.
This is not my opinion, Brian. This is just what the numbers tell us. We establish a methodology for grading the economy under President Trump back in 2017. It's now the same methodology applied to President Biden. And he has gone up. It used to be a B+ grade, and it's now an A-. And that is based on a few things. What we do here is we compare the economy under the current president to the economy under prior presidents at the same point in their first term. And here's how good the underlying economy is.
We were safer, wealthier, and stronger.
So former President Donald Trump has been ranked as the worst president in office during the last 150 years and the fourth worst overall. That's according to a C-SPAN survey that includes the assessments of about 142 historians and professional observers of the presidency. Joining me now is one of the historians consulted, Tim Naftali, CNN presidential historian and former director of the Nixon Presidential Library. Look, I guess the good news, Tim, for Trump is that he was ranked above Franklin Pierce, James Buchanan, and Andrew Johnson. You know, three racists, two of whom their indifference led to the Civil War. So I guess Trump's got that going for him?
Well, to debut in the basement of American presidents is just awful. He is the first to debut in one of these surveys at that level since Warren G. Harding, when the rankings of American presidents began by Arthur Schlesinger's father early in the 20th century.
Historians and scholars rated Joe Biden as the 14th best president in U.S. history. His greatest achievement, according to the poll, defeating Donald Trump in 2020. As for Trump, the 45th president, he finished 46th among historians, which is dead last.
A vote for Donald Trump is a vote to put money back in our pockets and good food on our kids' plates. Yes. Or, as Trump would say, it's a vote to make America great again. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Problem is that you really want to be a white girl. Your problem is that you really don't even want to be black.
These are my people. This is where I belong.